Hello everyone, my name is Aaron. Welcome back to the channel. We are 1 week out from what is arguably the largest event here in Malaysia for the Pokemon TCG season, and it is the Pokemon Championships 2022-2023 Malaysia. This is pretty much the national championships of those countries that are currently in the Southeast Asia region. We just had the Philippine Championships and a couple of weeks back. This weekend or this coming weekend is Malaysia's, and this is the final tournament, I think worldwide, for the Battle Styles and Scarlet Violet format. So what better way to cap off this particular format than to go through the picks of the best decks that you should be playing at this event. So if you have not really decided if you're going to attend this event but you're really not sure what to pick out, this video is for you. Or if you're just trying to scope out what could other players be playing, then let's watch along. So without further ado, let's go through the decks that we have in store today. The first deck we're talking about is Arceus VStar and Giratina VStar. Now this deck or this particular list was piloted by my friend Cash to the top of the Singapore Regional League recently. And I think this deck is very well suited for the metagame here in Malaysia as well as in Singapore. It has a lot going for it. It has a very straightforward game plan. You're essentially setting up with Arceus VStar, with Trinity Nova, with Starbirth into a heavy hitter in Giratina VStar. You complement that with some very important support Pokemon in Bibarel as well as Squirvet, allowing you to draw out of sticky situations. Now the deck also runs a Judge Path package, so that is supposed to slow down a bunch of decks in a format that relies on abilities of their rulebox Pokemon, your Pokemon V, your Pokemon EX, even your Radiant Pokemon. So overall, it has a very strong setup. It has a heavy hitter. It has support Pokemon that lets you draw out of sticky situations, as I said, and it has disruption. So all in all, I think this is a deck well suited for our metagame, especially because it's a best of one format for this coming national championships, I have to say. Now, I want to also highlight that this deck runs a single Raihan, and I'm a big fan of Raihan in Arceus decks. Imagine going first and attaching energy down only to get your only Arceus V knocked out by like a Meloetta or something like that, or a Miraidon EX. At least Raihan is there for you to sort of bail yourself out by allowing you to have that second Arceus evolve into Arceus V Star, getting the energy from the discard, searching also for the DTE, and you pretty much have a setup and you can start hitting with Trinity Nova. And without the Raihan, you're just set back a whole turn, right? So I'm a huge fan of Raihan. I also am a huge fan of the double escape rope. Personally, I think switch outs are very important for Arceus decks. Many a time, you run one switch and one escape rope, and you lose the switch early on, and you may prize the escape rope or something like that, and then you're pretty much locked in, in the active position with no energy. Or for what it's worth, I've had situations where running the two switch outs and both getting them prized, that's just a horrible feeling, especially because you want to be accelerating energy as early as you can, right? So I'm a big fan of the double escape rope in one switch. Personally, I think with where the meta is going right now, I think the double choice belt is needed. So I feel like there is a need to find space for that extra choice belt. Reason because there is going to be a lot of Mew in Malaysia, I think. Folks have been tuning their lists, I'm sure, over the course of the season, and we saw a very strong showing from Mew at the last round of events, where I believe it was out of 3 tournaments and Mew took them all 3 in the same weekend. So definitely find space for the second choice belt, but I think overall this is a very solid list that you should be working off on, and the learning curve for this deck not as steep as the others in the format. So if you're new and you're thinking about playing at this weekend's tournament, Arceus VStar, Giratina VStar. Try it out. The second option that we have over here is Mew itself. So this is the DTEemu. This is the Mew that is feared by a lot of decks around the format for the sheer number of times where you get Judge Path and for whatever reason you are not able to play the game anymore. So while it does not have the Meloetta package, which scares Arceus for the most part, scares me personally because I play a lot of Arceus, it does have a very consistent build overall. It is not a deck that I have a lot of experience with personally, but knowing for a fact that Mew is able to really go off from turn 1 is something of a testament to the deck, especially because it's been around for I think over a year at this point, or maybe even 2 years. I'm not too sure. So the deck really relies on using Gensec V to use its Fusion Strike system to draw into cards as early as possible, get you the right combination of cards in order for you to take big knockouts using new VMAX. You're essentially, trading off the burst potential of turn 1 from Meloetta for a very streamlined build in this particular instance of Mew. He also runs the Forest Steel Stone, so your consistency engine is just off the charts. It has the Bell VIP pass. It pretty much is the Mew that we have known for a while now. This particular list is run by Joshua Doctolero, who is now the reigning champion, national champion for the Philippine Championships. So congrats again, Joshua. We did an interview with him just a couple of weeks back, so we've not watched that. Go through that, and he does share his thoughts about the list as a whole, and what essentially gave him his win. I personally like the different touches that he has made to the list. I believe this is actually a list from Omnipoke, which he just grabbed and used. And to me, there is a lot of things going on here, right? You have a fan of Waves, you have an Avery, you still run that Serena and Roxanne one-offs. So I think all in all, this deck has what it takes to really do very well. And you should be expecting a lot of Mew, right? Either DTEemu or even Fusion Mew moving into this coming weekend. So if you're not sure how to play against Mew, you really should be prepared, because the deck is just consistent. It has damage potential, it has speed, it has disruption, right? So Mew, VMAX, DTEemu, I should say, for my second pick. For my third pick is the deck of the Malaysia Regional League champion, which is Lugia VStar. But this particular list is a more refined and updated version. And this is from Juancho Saldana, Mr. Primetime Wizard TV, who took down the, I believe it was the late night 104, the 104th late night tournament on PTCGL. So this is the list that he piloted to the win at this tournament, which I believe had more than 200 online players, which is crazy for events nowadays. So Lugia VStar goes without saying. It's been released since Silver Tempest. It's paired with Archeops. It does Lugia things, right? Summoning Star, bring your Archeops into play, accelerate energies from the deck, and you have a host of attackers that, take apart any deck in format, right? The only weakness of Lugia VStar is probably itself in coin flips. So you have to run, Capturing Aroma and Mesagoza to set up, which are not really consistent because you have to hit either hits or tails in specific situations for the Aroma. And for Mesagoza, you have to hit hits, otherwise you're not going to search for anything. This list in particular, what I noticed is that it doesn't run the Stonjourner. And to be fair, a lot of lists that we've seen from events more recent in the worldwide sphere are starting to cut Stonjourner. And I think this is not too bad, considering that you can opt to go into the Single Strike Urshifu V if you're trying to knock out an Arceus, or you could just go for a Tyranitar V as well. And it saves you a spot that you could use elsewhere, right? I think overall, Lugia VStar is probably the best deck in format. I say probably because I have another pick that is likely to be the best deck. But personally, I think Lugia VStar is one of, if not the best decks in format at the moment. Especially because it doesn't need a lot to set up. You essentially just are looking for Summoning Star on turn 2, and that's it. Your game plan is set. And it has a lot of good outs against the rest of the decks in the meta right now. You run a Radiant Serena for the Lostbox matchup. You run the Yveltal for anything weak to dark. Tyranitar V is huge. 230 hit points on a basic is crazy. Everything struggles to hit that out in one hit, to knock it out in one hit. You're pretty much well set up for anything in the format. I think the only way that you probably slow down is if you get stuck under a path lock. That's something that both Mew and Arceus would try to do. But once you get out of it, you're good to go, right? So look at VStar, strong deck, consistent as you can get in this current format with some flips, but arguably still a very strong pick for this weekend. Brings us to the next version of Mew, and all the Arceus fans around the world, even especially in Malaysia, would probably crucify me for saying that there's 2 Mews in my top 5 pick, and I'm sorry for that, but it's true. You are going to probably see Fusion Mew as well. When we played Malaysia Regional League about a few weeks back, or about a month back at this point, we played 7 rounds of Swiss, and you could essentially see Mew VMAX paired with Meloetta even back then in Malaysia. So actually, to be fair, one of the top 8 lists was a Fusion Mew. So Fusion Mew has been around for a while. It did fall off in popularity, but it did make a comeback, right? A couple of weeks back, in I believe it was Hartford Regionals. So this particular list that you're seeing right now is, Hartford and Malmo, I should say. This particular list is actually the first place list from Leslie Puisto, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who took down the Malmo Regional Championships. And to me, this is as good as it can get for a Fusion Mew list. I know there's a few versions of it going around. I picked this version particularly because I think it has a very interesting shell that doesn't try to do too much. You're still having the access to Meloetta. You have a Deoxys who is able to use Photon Burst. You have the Forest Seal Stones in here, the Bell VIP Pass. Nothing really much changes. And you also still run the 2 Paths to the Peak and the Lost Vacuum combination. So you have access to the ability to Judge Path or Roxanne Path into an opponent, and then you can draw yourself out of it with the Lost Vacuum. So I think overall, this is the deck that I think you would likely see in Malaysia as well, compared to other decks in the format. You probably see more Mew in Malaysia than anything else, I think. So if you're not prepared for either versions of Mew, you probably want to take a look at your deck choice, right? So what's different from this Mew? I think having Meloetta and Deoxys makes it more difficult for a lot of other decks in order for them to try to race you, right? Because by benching Meloetta and Deoxys, you're not giving the opponent access to a Mew VMAX knockout, which you can't avoid in the standard Turbo Mew version, since that's your only attacker, right? And the fact is, you are able to go off on turn 1, which I have been a recipient on when I got hit for Melorus Echo for 240 damage at the Malaysia Regional League, and there goes my Arceus with the energy on it. So this is a deck that Arceus decks would fear, because we are essentially saying, I'm going to energy pass, and do you have what it takes to knock out what I have? So it is what it is. It's one of those situations. They don't run many escape ropes. 2 is probably the standard. So where possible, you've got to try and hope that, after going through the Elisa Sparkle, after going through the deck, getting Genesect out, they don't find the escape rope to drag out the Arceus on the bench. But in all likelihood, when that happens, try to rely on your Raihan. I think that's the only way you can get out of it. But yeah, so Fusion Mew, definitely an optimum choice going into this weekend. And of course, what is this meta outlook without a Lostbox to be featured? And this version here is probably, to me, the best version of Lostbox. Now, I preface that by saying that I'm not a Lostbox player at all. I've tried it, I've struggled. This deck has a high learning curve. It has a very interesting, intricate number of lines that you could play. This particular list is the one from Daniel Altavia from the Hartford Regionals about a couple of weeks back. They placed 5th with it, but I recall also seeing the same exact list piloted by Azul and a couple of members of their team, all making it into day 2. So this version of Lostbox or Lost Zone Box, whatever you call it, runs the Kyogre, Raikou, and Dragonite V package rather than just focusing purely on single prizes. Now, I know folks have been saying that single prize versions are better off because you avoid the double prize. But the fact that you could go, going second, turn 1, 250 damage with Dragon Gale, that in itself should be a reason to play this deck. Because you can knock out almost anything in the active spot if you're able to get to 7. And with this list, it's very likely that you can, right? You're running the Forest Seal Stones for consistency, max out on Mirage Gates. You have the Battle VIP Pass, obviously. I know folks have been cutting that, but why cut such an important card? I think the only card here which I think is interesting to only play a single copy of is the Lost Vacuum. I seem to recall certain lists playing 2, but it could be just me, not fully knowing the Lostbox deck enough. And of course, the addition from very recently is the Pokestops, replacing the Beach Courts. So you don't have a retreating pivot, but you still have a way to dig through a deck to find the cards that you need. So you can dig for switch cards, dig for escape ropes, dig for nest balls or battle VIP pass in case you miss them. So all in all, I think this is a very solid deck. It still has everything the Lostbox deck is trying to use in order to get itself a hit. Double Stabilize, the Radiant Greninja, only one Cramorant, but I think that's more of a evolution now from the standard 2 now to 1. It has coverage for almost every matchup, I want to say. I think it's only, sort of iffy matchup seems to be Arceus decks. But even then, if you're going to go off with a Dragon Gale turn 1, right, or setting up a huge Aqua Storm towards the end to catch up, I think this deck is very poised to take a win eventually in our region. The only thing that I say that with stopping it is probably the fact that the skill cap is really high in order to find the right lines. And I'll be first to say that I do not know the best lines up of this deck. I just know that when I see it in action, it works so fluidly, right? So testament to the skill level of the players who are playing it, right? So yeah, this is Lost Zone Box, the deck that I personally think is poised for a win eventually in Southeast Asia. And what is a deck profile from me without featuring an Arceus Duraludon deck? And if you were thinking about me just finishing off the top 5 without paying any homage to my boy Duraludon, you definitely need to watch more of my videos. So Arceus Duraludon has been a deck that's been around ever since Duraludon has been around, and then it evolved from just playing Duraludon to Arceus Duraludon because you could accelerate the 3 energies in the pinch, right? And I played Arceus Duraludon with Vulpix at the Malaysia Regional League. That was at the end of April. And in the course of that 1 month, we've seen an evolution in this deck to now incorporate Umbreon. And Umbreon is a very strong option here because it allows you to use Dark Signal, which drags out a Pokemon. It's essentially a boss in a Pokemon. And it sort of replaced the Drapion in the deck as well because you now have a Darkness type attacker that could hit into Gardevoir, it could hit into Mew, so you no longer need the Drapions. This particular list comes from Connor Chapetta, who finished top 64 at Hartford. Now I know that folks will be saying, hey, there are some lists that are much high placing. I think it's a very important thing to know about how you like a particular deck or how you see the style of a deck play out. I prefer Connor's list here because not only is he running, or he chose to run the Duraludon with Umbreon, they also have the Radiant Alakazam and Hawlucha, which in my testing has gotten me very interesting KOs on Pokemon that you would usually not be able to knock out in one hit, right? It also has Raihan, which is key. You need a Raihan in a Arceus Duraludon deck because it saves you in a pinch. Especially because in this version of Arceus, you run Luminion. So an Ultra Ball becomes a Raihan very easily for you to accelerate that energy that you may have lost on turn 1 and get you back in the game. Other parts of this deck that I really enjoy is the fact that you still run Adventurous Discovery. Some decks I've seen run a full 3 count. In this version, a single count, so you have access to it. And the Volo. Volo is game breaking. Like, you could easily just win a game against Lostbox off a Volo. Or even against other matchups as well. But against Lostbox, Volo is like, I'm sealing the game right there and then, right? You're discarding essentially a Pokemon that's heavily damaged that they will probably try to Sableye, Sprinkle on, or they would probably want to Aqua Storm on. But they say, nope, Volo, there goes the entire damage Pokemon into the bin. So, all in all, I think that's a very nice touch to the evolution of this deck in the last few weeks or so. The one thing that I'll say though, that in playing this deck, I am very worried for Mew because even when we played Drapion in Arceus Duraludon, it was so easy to just fall so far behind going first or even going second obviously, but even going first, that the double Drapions were so key to just ending the Mew matchup there and then. Not having double Drapion, now switching it into an Umbreon, is really relying on the fact that you would be able to use a Duraludon VMAX and just clean up a game. While saying that, you're running only 3 stadiums now to bomb that path of the peak. So, in my personal sense, this list over here, or this deck as a whole, if you're running no Drapion and you're running 1 less stadium to bump path, you're saying that I'm very likely going to take the loss against Mew. I played quite a few games with this list right now. I personally like it. And I'm personally saying that even though there's going to be Mew in Malaysia, I'm going to take my chances, right? And that's really just a preference call, because I do think that the deck is very fun to play. It's probably the deck with the most number of options that you could have in an Arceus deck. And the fact that you're running very interesting decks like the Radiant Alakazam and Holuja combination does get you wins from very unlikely situations, right? I should also say that you now run two choice belt instead of the single one in the previous iteration of this deck, and you run two single strike energy as well. So your Duraludon VMAX now hits for 270 if you have one single strike energy, and with a Radiant Alakazam and Holuja combination, that allows you to knock out stuff like Giratina VStar in a single hit, which arguably you would never get a chance to, right, in any normal circumstances. So there's a lot going for this deck. I think this deck is well poised to do well in situations where the pilot of the deck knows what they're doing, but also if we can navigate those rough matchups and get a little lucky in between, right? There's a lot going for this deck, I think. But you really need to just high roll sometimes, and that's just the nature of any Arceus deck, I should say. But yeah, if you're going to be seeing me in Taman Mall on the 10th or 11th of June, let me know. I probably will be bringing this deck. Maybe not the exact 60, but I might change it up in the next week or so. But you'll probably see me there. Come say hi. We can grab a photo or anything. But yeah, this is the end of the video. I really hope this has been useful for you. If it has, please let me know in the comment section. As always, your likes, your shares, your subscribes are always appreciated. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. See ya.